I'd like to say good morning to everybody. It's good to be back. A little bit, I guess, strange to be coming home after what is about 6 years. You know, Avery will turn 6 years old tomorrow, actually. And I remember whenever we left, we were expecting Avery. Now we've got an old. I go on too long, so. This morning, what we're going to be talking about is the title of the lesson is Seeing to Believe. So we live in a time where everything that we are going to believe in, we have to see. We can't actually have faith. It doesn't seem like it's not real, right? It's something that you just imagine or make up. And we're going to talk about this notion that you actually have to see something in order to believe it in this lesson. So we have the saying, right? Seeing is believing. You know, if I came to you and I said, hey, I've got a bunch of blue bananas down there at Walmart, right? Or at the Middlebourne I was around, right? If I said I had a bushel of blue bananas, you'd say you're crazy. But if I took you to it and I showed you those bananas, you would say, okay, now I've got it. We've got a very heavy correlation between what we can see and what we can witness with our own eyes. You know, when we say this, I have to see it in order to believe it. And the best example we probably have in Scriptures is that of Thomas. Now, before we get too far into Thomas, we're going to talk a little bit about Thomas, because Thomas gets a bad rap, in my opinion. And we've got a sermon about this, or I've got a sermon about this, but we're not going to be able to get to it this week. But Thomas gets a bad. I've got a sermon about this, but we're not going to be able to get to it this week. But Thomas gets a bad rap. What do we call Thomas? We call him Doubting Thomas, right? But if you go back, whenever Christ was going to resurrect Lazarus from the dead, you know, he was going to go back to Jerusalem, and all the apostles were like, don't do that, far be it from you, don't go up there, there's people, they want to kill you, Christ. Thomas actually voices his opinion, and he goes, hey, wherever you're going, I'm going with you, I will die with you. So it shows you that Thomas is a man of faith. You know, he was a man of strong belief in Christ. But when it came to the fact that they said that Christ was arose, or that Christ had arisen, he said what? And in John chapter 20, verses 24 through 25, it says this. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told them, we have seen the Lord. But he said to him, unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe. I will not believe it. Now, whose choice was it? It was Thomas's choice. Now, if you've got your friends here saying, hey, he's risen, you can choose to believe their testimony, but Thomas shows us something that's far too real to our human nature. I couldn't see it, therefore I don't believe in it, right? Unless I see, I will never believe. We often require sight to believe. Christ talks about eyes and eyesight in a very interesting manner, and I think this is part of why it's so heavily linked. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 22 through 23, he talks about this. He says, the eye of the lamp, or the eye is the lamp of the body, so if your the eye of the lamp the eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? So what he's talking about, he comes through this, it's like, and you have to understand the way. If you're dim of eyesight, what else doesn't work all that well? How do I grab things? Well, I probably shouldn't mess with the recorder, but how do I grab things? Well, you say you grab them with your hand, right? It's not just with your hand. For instance, I got it, right? You use your sight. You use your perception. We're not going to say the word perception yet, because we'll get to that in a minute. You use your ability to physically see to move about the world, right? That's how I don't fall off these steps. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, I can only go so far, and then I have to stop. Otherwise, I'll fall down up here. I've never done that before. By the way, Mike, I will have preached the most famous sermon that will ever be in this building. I don't know if you're aware of this. These couches are up here for a reason now. But anyhow, we have to be able to, we link belief to our physical ability to see. And there's actually a book, and I'm not going to get too far into it, but in the process of the book, the man says he's having a conversation with Christ, and he says, he's having a conversation with Christ, and he says, if you had just taken yourself and removed yourself from the cross, whenever we told you, if you were the Son of God, remove yourself from the cross, so that we may what? Believe in you, so that we might see that you're the Son of God. It's not sight that's required, so that we might see that you're the Son of God. It's not sight that's required, it's what? It's faith. You know, we don't need the sight aspect. The idea that the eye is the lamp of the body is something that takes a little bit of understanding, but it enables you to walk and use your hands. The effectiveness of your eye enables you to walk and use your hands. The effectiveness of your eye essentially determines whether or not you are lost. Now, interestingly, this is the juxtaposition that happens in the Scriptures, right? When Christ begins to talk about the eye and the importance of it of what it is to be able to see, when he talks about, tells his followers to lay up treasures in a place that is not seen. Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21, he says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Amen. It's not just about what we can touch and feel. He's saying there's a promise of something far better, far greater. And guess what, brothers and sisters? You, and here's the shocker, right? And I'm going to just break the news to you right now. You are not going to see it until you die. Do I need to see it before I die? Personally, I don't. We'll get into that. These things, they keep me on track. They're not just to keep me in line, it's to slow me down too. Look there, I almost went down. To what I'm telling you, you're not seeing, you can't see what I'm saying, right? The correlation between seeing and believing is well established, and now we're going to examine it, not as a strength, but as a weakness. And when you go back into the Scriptures, Thomas is by far not the only man to rely on something that plagued the Israelites for their entire history. In Exodus chapter 14, verses 10 through 11, when it says this, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes. And behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? You know, if you think about where we are within the biblical narrative that we're going through this, what just happened to the people of Israel? God just liberated them. He showed them His almighty and divine power. Right? But they lifted up their eyes, and what we saw the Egyptians. We saw them coming. And now all of a sudden, that the God that we're supposed to have faith in, that we can't just reach out and touch Him and see Him and prove Him, even though His works were already well established in our eyes. We saw the works He'd done, but because we can't lay our hands on Him and see Him now, and we see the threat, we're going to be afraid. And we're going to ask Moses, were there not graves in Egypt for us to die in? After all the signs that God had done, the Israelites believed in the Egyptians. After all the signs that God had done, the Israelites believed in the Egyptians' power more when they lifted their eyes up to see them. Exodus chapter 32:1 says this, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered, shall go up before us, for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. All right, so what's going on here? The people of Israel, they say, Aaron, you have to make us gods. What kind of gods would you like? The type we can see. The ones that and I always thought this was one of the most comical parts of the Bible. And it's not the situation isn't funny, but Aaron's response to it, it's like, you ever walk into your room and you know your dog, or you walk into your house and you know your dog's torn something up? You know your dog's torn something up. Because he's anywhere but you. He's not going to look at you. When Moses comes down from the mountain, he says, Aaron, what is it that this you have done? And Aaron says, I threw the gold into the fire and out came these calves. It says right there in the scripture, he took carving tools and shaped them. No. Out came these calves. I don't know where they came from. Do you guys know where they came from? I don't know. No, they needed gods that they could see, that they could have right there with them, that they could put their hands out and touch right there with them, that they could put their hands out and touch. And if you think about one of the commandments of the Bible is what? You shall make no image after me, right? I'm not something that can be formed by the hands of man. You can't make a symbol of me and worship that. It even talks about in Isaiah, we're going to get to Isaiah in just a second, but even talks about in Isaiah where it's like, you'll take one piece of the tree, you'll take one piece of the log, and you'll throw it into the fire and you'll cook with it, and the other piece you'll shape with carving tools and you'll bow down and worship it. This could be Saul that Moses was delayed. They told Aaron to make them gods that they could see. I have to have it. I have to have that something that I can see. Later, during the last years of the northern kingdom of Israel, the script is flipped. Isaiah tried to teach Isaiah tried to teach the people not to look for salvation in that which they could see. So, if you follow the history of the nations of Israel, Israel's about to fall here. So, where do the Israelites go for help? Yeah, so guess where they didn't go to for help? The Bible study this morning, what did we say in the Bible study this morning? The prodigal son hired himself out. I will be the solution to my problems. The people of Israel, likewise, in Isaiah chapter 31 through 1 or 3, it says, woe to those who go down to Egypt. Well, think about this for a second. We were just in Exodus, and the people saw who? Saw the Egyptians, and they were afraid because they said they're going to kill us, right? Even though we have God on our side, oh no, they're going to kill us, right? Even though we have God on our side, oh no, they're going to kill us. Why? Because you can see it. Now, fast forward a few centuries, and now the northern kingdom is about to fall. Who are they going to turn to for help? Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help. On horses who trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but do not look to the Holy One of Israel or consult the Lord. And yet he is wise and brings disaster. He does not call back his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the helpers of those who work iniquity. The Egyptians are man and not God, and their horses are flesh and not spirit. When the Lord stretches out his hand, the helper will stumble, and he who is helped will fall, and they will all perish together. All perish together. What was going on was, there was a neighboring kingdom. I think it was the Chaldeans at this time that was threatening the security of the Israelites. Well, where are we going to go for help? And Isaiah lays it out plain and simple. The Egyptians are man. Lays it out plain and simple. The Egyptians are man. Why then would they go to the Egyptians for help? Because they were quote unquote, real. Right? I can reach out. The Egyptians, I'm going to trust in this. Just like the prodigal son, I'm going to hire myself out to something that will help me that I know is there. I'm not saying you can't know God's there. I'm just saying I'm going to go with what's easy to know is there. John 10. This is spanning pretty well the entire history of the nation of Israel, right? You got Exodus. What did they say? They saw the Egyptians and were afraid, even though they could have relied on God. Okay, we were a nation for a while, and then we're getting ready to fall. So then what sign do you do that we may see and believe in you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written. He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus then said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father. It was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. So when you come into these Israelites, these Jews that are sitting here, they say, what sign do you perform? And when they're asking this question, it's like, what sign do you perform so that we have no but to believe in you? That's what they're asking. They don't want, here's what the situation comes down to here. They do not want the choice to believe in God to depend on them. Bring yourself down from the cross, and then we will believe. The bottom line is, who makes the choice? Now, that's something that's always been interesting to me. No matter where you go in the Scriptures, at every point in time, God, the all-powerful, almighty being, something. The choice to be good. The choice to depend on Him. It's the same, like that prodigal son, like the story of the prodigal son. If you want what I've created, son, you can have it. You can have it. The choice to stay with me or go is your choice. It was not a tyrannical father. It was a benevolent father. Do we face consequences for leaving God? Yes, but who makes those consequences? Yes, but who makes those consequences? That's on us. And he talks about, I will bring disaster. Yeah, he'll bring disaster. But he brings disaster to do what? To protect ourselves most of the time from ourselves. Think about the great flood for just a second, right? Think about the great flood for just a second. Right before God floods the earth, it says, I'm telling you, that thing's going to take me out before long. It says that God was grieved to his heart. You know, I've listened to people talk about that, and what they say is like, I just can't believe that an all-loving God would destroy the world. And here's the thing, if you don't believe that, if you can't understand that, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't understand evil. You realize that we are very, very well incubated against our own dark natures. Largely, probably wholly and entirely, because of the Bible which you hold in your hands. About how people solve their problems? When Cain had a problem with Abel, how did he solve it? He killed him. Okay, when David had a problem, I think it was Uriah. Let's try to go between Uzziah. I think it was Uriah. Let's try to go between Uzziah and Uriah. When David had a problem with Uriah, how did he solve that problem? Killed him. And then if I ask you in society today, what constitutes a bad person? Oh, that person said something I didn't like, therefore I don't like him or her. Or that person holds an opinion that I don't agree with. Oh, wait a minute, how do we go from, hey, killing is our problem solving, to the mark of a bad person is... That's been built up by the Bible. We don't realize how well we're incubated against our own dark natures. That was a little bit too big of a tangent, maybe. But they say that we may see and believe. They say that we may see and believe. It was not Moses, right? Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses. What's the significance of that? What's easier to believe in for the Israelites? Moses would have been easier to believe in, right? It was not Moses. Circling back to Thomas, we find that once he is able to see, he's able to believe. John chapter 20, verses 27 through 29 says this, Then he said to Thomas, Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe. And Thomas answered him, My Lord and my God. And Jesus said to him, Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen, and yet believe. And yet believe. Christ makes the distinction that the people who believe without needing the confirmation of their eyes are blessed. When we consider our calling as a Christian, we are not called to walk by sight. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 6 through 7 says this, Body, we are away from the Lord, for we walk by faith and not by sight. You think about that, that's a little bit of a tongue twister when you think about this, when you look at that. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. When I depend on what? When I depend on my eyes, when I depend on my ears, when I depend on what I'm able to do, if I'm just fully dependent on me when I'm not praying, and I'm depending upon myself, then who am I not depending on? When we are at home in our bodies, we are away from the Lord. In walking by faith, we walk according to things that are not able to be seen. Because here's the question, this is one of the big sticking points that we have in today's culture. It's like the atheists, they go, where's your proof? Well, how can we see what you're talking about here? Right? Oh wait, nobody raised their hand. Who was there when Christ walked the earth? Wasn't any one of us. So what are we doing here? This is where we start making the difference. This is where we start making the difference. It's the same challenge here in Corinthians as it would have been for the Israelites who sought an alliance with Egypt over faith in God. The question for us is this: which is more real? That which can or that which cannot be seen? We get twisted up. It's kind of interesting because when you think about what we are, we're kind of like we're a really well-defined tool of perception, right? And then our conscious mind actually sorts all these things. Like, not only can I see, I can also feel, I can smell, I can hear, right? So I'm getting input from everywhere. And then when I get input from everywhere, I make sense of all that, right? But the fact of the matter is, because we're so good at being able to perceive all of these different things, not just at once, because here's the question: if you ever got hit with a foul smell, what good does it do you to shut your eyes? Right? We're so good at perceiving all at once that we don't know sometimes where what we know comes from. The eeriest things, it's like you ever get a feeling that somebody's just watching you? And there's no way that you can know why something's watching, but you get this feeling, and sure enough, it's like you turn around, there's a hawk sitting there in a tree, just eyeing it, or eyeing the fur cap you've got on, or something. It's just, when something's watching you. So which is more real, that which can be seen or that which cannot be seen? So, to me, the answer for me has got to be the things that cannot be seen are far more real. And we're going to talk about this real quick. And this is part of me, because when I think, I'm always honest. This is part of me, because when I think, I'm always honest, I'm not the brightest guy. So when I figure something out and it blows my mind, I will tell you that this blows my mind, because this is true. And maybe it won't blow your minds, because maybe you already figured it out. Like I said, not the brightest guy, right? But when I figured this out, love. Oh, yeah, you can. You can see it. No, you cannot. What's it look like? Oh, well, it looks like one person hugging another. Or another person smiling at another. Or another person smiling at another. Or another person that embraces another or is happy with it. You can't see it. Because here's the thing. If you've ever watched a movie and you think that you're seeing love, or you think that you're seeing anger or sadness, and we're going to get to this in a second, you're not. You're seeing someone acting like they're sad. Or acting like they're happy. Yeah, how many times do you come from a movie star and it's like the movie they were just in, everything was, ooh, we're all happy, and then you come in to find out something in their own personal lives was really going bad, and I saw them happy. No, you can't see it. You can't see love. You cannot see happiness. It's like, sure you can. Well, when someone smiles, that means they're happy, right? Have you ever smiled when you were sad? Maybe just to lessen the burden of sadness off of someone else? Maybe just to lessen the burden of sadness off of someone else? Absolutely you have. Okay, you cannot see sadness. Oh, what's sadness look like? Oh, it's when I have tears coming down my face and I'm grieving. Yes, but that's not what sadness looks like. But you can see this is the important distinction. You can see it manifesting itself in a way that you can understand. But you don't understand it with these. What do you understand it with? You understand it with this. Not the microphone, this. Right? You understand it with this, and you understand it with this. Because if you were just some robot in this body, you wouldn't understand what other people were going through. You cannot see pain. Yeah, you feel it. Yeah, you feel it. And I've heard a guy make the case about this before. He said pain is the most real thing. It's like, well, why is it the most real thing? Why? Because it's inescapable. I was just talking to my grandma. She said, as she gets older, as she's gotten older, she's like, I started to get aches and pains, and I think about when I was young. She said, whenever you see some people that pass away young, it's like sometimes you're sad, but at the other side of it, it's like, well, at least they missed all this, all the aches and the pains, Because right now, I get along pretty good, but I'm still a fairly young man. But I can also tell you this, that I've been hurt and not shown it. I think we've all been in that situation before where we've been hurt and not shown. Especially, I think we've all been in that situation before where we've been hurt and not shown. Especially, this is how I know you guys are in good hands here, because Mike is a Braves fan, right? But have you ever seen a player get up and they say, no, I'm good. And they're like, how are you feeling? They're just like, I'm good. I can play. You cannot. And here's the other thing. Whenever you think about that, when they say you're perceiving pain in them, but if I'm limping up here, guess what? I'm not hurt. You can't see it. You cannot see fear. What's it look like? Tell me what it looks like. Okay, but you can perceive them in something or someone else. So it's like with your eyes, if I see my son crying and his lips all puckered out, I can see with my eyes that his face is making a pattern. And because that whenever I feel like he's feeling, my face makes the same pattern, then I perceive something behind that pattern. I perceive that he's sad. Right? There's a level of perception that's sad. Right? There's a level of perception that goes further than that. Right? You can't see it, but you can understand that it is there in their actions and faces. You know, that's one of the things, one of the markers. The only way you can tell that I'm even semi-conscious, right? Like evidence of a soul. It's perception of a soul, right? It's perception of a mind within this body, right? Because if I were up here just going like, what is exit, not red, blue? But there's a pattern in the way that I'm presenting myself. So there's something behind it, right? Hebrews chapter 11. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by the people of old received their commendation. For by it the people of old received their commendation. You think about this for a second. The people of old received their commendation. They received their commendation because they could believe and have faith. They could believe and have faith in something they couldn't see. Even when it was doing works and miracles, right? By faith we understand that the universe was created by the Word of God so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. Okay, this statement here says the universe which we see, the power of God is not necessarily seen, but is perceived in creation. Romans chapter 1, verses 19 through 20 says this, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them, for His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived. Not seen, it's an understanding that it's there. Have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. See, one of the interesting things that I would like to compare this to just for a second is like, if you favorite book that's not the Bible, right? My favorite book is actually the one that we were just talking about. It's called the, right? You know how many times Fyodor Dostoevsky makes an appearance in that book? 0. It's a work of fiction, right? But it's his work that he created. You may not be able to see this may not, you may not be able to see this may not, this may not be God. This earth that we're a part of may not be God. But guess what? It hangs, from our best understanding, it hangs on nothing. In the middle of the vast expanse that we have no idea where it came from, and the earth that it's still consistent. We don't just float up into the sky and just like wonder, well, when am I going to land? There's all sorts of patterns that's here that we can barely even begin to understand. The reasoning, power, and mind of God cannot be seen with your eyes, but it can be perceived in things that have been made. You can see the mind behind it. It's like this, some of the scientists say, well, if you got this and this and this and this, then all this will happen. It's like, okay, where did this and this and this and this come from? And how did it get together? It's like, hey, I came home and you look at a pan of cookies that's sitting on the table, and I'm thinking, man, that's really good because this will show my lack of cooking. So eggs and flour and chocolate chips all kind of came together and found their way into a specified temperature, and they came out just in time before they burned, and they just randomly got here on the... How lucky am I today? No, it's like, no, something created that. Something manipulated the patterns, right? In order for the universe to exist as it would, we would require thousands, maybe even millions of impossible coincidences is what I'm looking for. So there you're not so sure now that there's something rattling around in there. But in order for this whole universe to exist as it is would require millions of coincidences. Oh, coincidences. Oh, how lucky are we? Sorry, I don't really buy that. In perceiving the power of God's reason in the world this way, we can perceive the power of God's reason in a book. And this is what we're going to be. You know what we take for granted? I'm not going to move that recorder, and I don't have one up with me. I have one on my seat. But you know what we take for granted? Take a look. You got a Bible around you? Do you know what that thing is? And I say that thing to make light of it, and trust me, by no means do I make light of it. You realize what that thing is? Oh, it's just a book. It's a book like any other book. Oh, you don't know what the Bible is then. Let's say for a moment, let's just go with the atheist playbook here. Let's say for a moment, God's not real. And then all of this is just one giant happy coincidence. And we came from monkeys and all the law. And they figured it out. And let's talk about something that exists in this reality that just doesn't seem to fit right. God's not real. There is no divine influence on the Bible. Well, that means God is only a character created just like every other fictional character. Right? Just like every other fictional character. Right? That's what you can see. Now accept this line, consequences and coincidence. I don't know, maybe I just have my coincidences and consequences all mixed up there. But accept this line of coincidences about the Bible without God. Okay? Number one, God is created as the character that created the world. Let's just say that all the powerful and profound stories of Genesis are all made-up stories of this character, other made-up characters. Okay? And when I say the profound stories of Genesis, when you go into this, some of the short little accounts there, like we did with the prodigal son this morning, there's a lot of depth that goes into what you read there. But let's just say all that's made up. Okay, then... Okay, what you read there. But let's just say all that's made up. Okay, then... Okay... Moses arrives, and Moses, he's virtually guaranteed to have existed in reality. Right? We have the evidence. Okay? Moses arrives in a historical manner, an example given. Okay? He arrives, and who's he places allegiance to? This fictional character. Right? Okay. Then, Moses claims to interact with the God character and lays down a set of laws that are what? Extremely effective at establishing is claiming to get these laws from. Okay, a pretty good coincidence, right? Okay, let's go further. Okay, Moses and Joshua go forth and conquer land that they say was granted to them by the fictional character. All right, just say I come to you one day and I'm like, hey, guess what? Captain America says we're going to win this war. Like, well, hold on a second. That's a made-up character. Right, you're right. It's the same thing if you listen to what the atheist said. Right? The kingdom is well established under men who do what? The kingdom is well established under men who do what? Claim deep devotion to God. Remember, in this existence, who is not real. Keep going forward. The kingdom gets away from the made-up character. Oh, here's another coincidence. Coincidentally, things go poorly. Character. Oh, here's another coincidence. Coincidentally, things go poorly for them, but that can be no more than just another coincidence, right? Okay, go even further. A bunch of prophets then claim to interact with the fictional God, but luckily, they get a lot of their prophecies right. But they were just interacting with the work of fiction, right? Okay, keep going. Throughout their so-called interactions, they talk about this messianic figure who will arrive, which will arrive. What do you think about it? Erase, and this is tough because it's so ingrained in us. Erase everything you know about God. Erase everything you know about the Bible. Erase everything you know about history. And here comes a guy that says, we'll just pick Danny, for instance. Danny, through your line. We'll just pick Danny, for instance. Danny, through your line, the entire nation, the entire globe will be blessed through a man who exists in your line. And he will save us. Think about the sheer audacity of that statement. Oh, by the way, lo and behold, said the messianic figure arrives, claims to be the son of a fictional character, teaches for 3 years, gets caught by the government, and is crucified. Oh, that's the end of that story, right? Examples of this figure then go into the world. Why? I don't know. Because Jesus Christ, in this reality, Jesus Christ isn't the Son of God because there is no God, right? But the disciples, they decide, well, we really liked what he had to say, so we're going to make up a story about him rising from the dead. And not only are we going to make up this story, him rising from the dead, and not only are we going to make up this story, when people come to take my life and ask me, is what you're saying true? I'm not going to say, no, we just kind of made it up because we liked what the guy had to say. No, we're going to say, yes, it's true, we saw it. You know, like Thomas. I will never believe, but Thomas believes. Character that supposedly never really existed. All of this stems from think about this, from some small Jewish nation. When was the nation of the Jews, when was the nation of the Israelites ever a major world power above all others? You know, they had a golden age, but really the only place that they really had conquered out was just that little stretch by the Mediterranean Sea. And when you look at that on the world map, it's like that big. And when you look at that on the world map, it's like that big, right? Now, when you go into like the Romans or the Greeks, you're talking like expanses, or the Mongols. You know, you're talking about expanses across half the. But no, this never came from any of those. It came from that little nation of Israel. These teachings and writings outlasted all of those superpowers and is still not going away. You know, I heard this one time and it really kind of blew my mind. We're really smart, right? We are really smart as far as that goes. And you think about all the ideas that's been created, and it's like we had. And I'm not saying any political leanings one way or the other. I'm just saying, you know, we created communism in like the 1800s, and now generally, universally, it's agreed that it's not a great idea, right? We created fascism too. You know, we saw how that worked out for us. We created these things and really the reason we created these things was systems to replace the Bible and the way of living that Christ showed us. Well, guess what's going on? 2022? 2022nd year. And guess what all else is dying along the wayside? It's still Christianity. That book's a history, thousands of years old. And here's the other thing. It's been shut. With all of your mental acuity, right? It's been with all of your mental acuity, right? It's been shut for 2,000 years, and we haven't come up with anything better yet. You can see all that in the Bible. And here's my question for you. With all those patterns, do you perceive that something's behind it? And we'll talk about this tonight. That Bible is something otherworldly. You know, we didn't really go into it too far. It's amazing. We'll talk about it more tonight. But If you look at that Bible, you begin to understand the Scriptures and the history that goes into it and all the things that come together and the predictions it's made and what's come right. It's like I see something. I perceive something behind that in the same way that when I look out into the world, I see all that. In the same way that when I look out into the world, I see all this creation. I see how it's all structured and ordered out. Guess what? I perceive something there as well. So do you believe in God? Do you perceive that God is there? Do you have faith in Him? Or do you need to see it? I don't see it anymore that I've already seen. And if you believe in God, then you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God as He professed. And He made His own bold prediction saying, well, not one word of this law is going to pass away. Guess what? We're thousands of years behind that. It's like, still here. Then have you acted on that? Have you been baptized in that for the remission of your sins and for your salvation? If you need to do that, there's going to be opportunity. And if you've already done that, maybe we went off on our own way instead of Christ's way, and we need to return to God, we ask you to do that as opportunity is made.